Welcome everyone to the presentation on the Lean Framework, Agile Principles, and CMMI. It's basically a story about the Nationwide Application Development Center. Oops, need to turn that on. It's a centralized area at Nationwide that focuses solely on software development. Okay? So we believe in fundamentally the techniques and the practices to make us really a solid world-class software development shop. Okay? We support all of Nationwide. Okay? So we're sort of like a shared organization. Okay? We believe in Lean. We believe in Agile principles. Okay? And operational excellence, which if you know Lean is really in our DNA. Okay? So let's talk about our journey. We're going to talk a little bit about how Agile happened at Nationwide and where we ended up today. And we're going to talk a little bit about Lean. We're going to talk a little bit about CMMI. Okay? Just for curiosity, who wants to hear more about Lean or CMMI? Who wants to hear about Lean? A couple of you. Who wants to hear more about CMMI? I'm surprised. That's good. About the same. So we'll cover it. I'll try and leave a lot of questions at the end, or time for questions, so you can ask. I was hoping I'd get some other Nationwiders in here. It looks like anybody that's a Nationwider doesn't want to hear this story again. So if I need some help, hopefully I'll get some help from the audience. Okay, so let's talk about really the problem, the origin of the problem. There's really two different viewpoints of the IT problem that we have. There's the business viewpoint, and there's the IT viewpoint of what the problem is. So if you really think about it, when Agile started Nationwide, we were trying to solve a problem. And these were some of the characteristics of the problem. So from a business perspective, there was complexity, misdirection, project failure, cost, obviously. Cost is always an issue. Speed, we can never do it fast enough, right? Almost everyone has that problem in any company when it comes to IT. From a business perspective, those are the types of things we heard loud and clear from our business. Now, from an IT perspective, right? Things like conflicting priorities, lack of inclusion, multitasking, right? Gold plating, poor quality, all of those were issues as well, okay? But those are the IT viewpoint. That's the IT viewpoint of the issue, right? How many of you have seen this, right? How many of you know about this? Or seen this in your organizations? Multitasking, right? Gold plating, things like that. We had it rampant at Nationwide. Uh-oh. They're working? Okay. Well, that's good. So I was actually doing a Google search on Agile the other day, and this cartoon came up. How many have seen this cartoon? I hadn't seen this cartoon since I started doing Agile about 6 years ago. And it struck me that a lot of the Agile practices and techniques are trying to solve this problem. So if you remember the problem, we're trying to build a tree swing, right? And as you do handoffs, they always get a different idea of what they're trying to build, right? No one really gets the idea that you're trying to build a tree swing. So what was interesting to me is Agile is actually trying to solve this. And I also discovered that this was actually created in 1970, or not 70, in the 70s. Okay? So this has been around for a while, and we still haven't solved the problem. So really, I feel as though Agile is really our first time that we've really started to tackle this problem. Okay? So, at Nationwide, we began to attack the problem in really 2004. Started to see little pilots happening with Agile. Everybody wanted to try it. Okay? We brought in a lot of consultants to help us out, right? Each pilot was on its own in a different part of the organization. They were fundamentally trying to determine whether Agile was a viable solution. Many of these teams were very successful. and got a lot of play at the executive level about how well they had done. I was actually a part of a couple of these teams, and it was a challenge for these teams because realistically, if you know anything about Agile, you want to tear the furniture down. No walls, right? Well, that's what we had to do. And at Nationwide, when you tear furniture down, you're in trouble with facilities. They will come after you. So it was a difficult time trying to get people to understand that, hey, we really don't want queues. We would really like to have an open space. So we spent a lot of time fighting facilities, but at the same time, we were finding success. Now, granted, it was localized success. So there were small teams, small pilots. They all had their own kind of flavor of Agile. So reality was, we were seeing success, but we weren't seeing it across the board, okay? So in 2008, I like to say all the Agilists rose up and said, okay, enough's enough. We've heard about everybody doing it all over the organization. It's time we come together and really say what is Agile Nationwide. And actually, what's interesting is we kind of formed our own manifesto, okay? So we actually took about, I think it was about 10 of our leading Agile activists that had been running pilots or teams for years, got them together and said, okay, what's Agile look like in Nationwide? What do we believe in? What's our foundation? And that's where we focused on Scrum and XP. That was huge for us. For us to actually come out and say that was huge. We actually created what's called the Nationwide 21 Tea Leaves, which were really around the philosophies that we believed in. What were the items for you, the items that you had to do to be Agile at Nationwide? Because a lot of people claim they were Agile, but we wanted to make sure that we knew exactly what it meant to be Agile at Nationwide. Okay? Here is, and let's see if everybody can see it. This is our 21 tea leaves. Hopefully this looks familiar to you Agilists. Iterations, sprints, right? Whole team, refactoring, continuous integration, pair programming. We do pair programming. A lot of people can't believe that. We do it. We love it. It's a very valuable part of what we do. Release planning, story cards. All of these items were our foundation for what Agile looked like at our company. Okay? And we had agreement on this with all the leading Agilists at Nationwide. So we had the pieces. We had small teams working, but foundationally, we needed, how are we going to scale this stuff, right? If you really think about it, where we were at, we probably had a dozen teams, maybe less, doing Agile. We had a community. We had a manifesto, sort of, with our tea leaves. We had a lot of success. But at Nationwide, it's a drop in the bucket to what IT is at Nationwide. So we needed to scale. And I don't know if anybody's ever Googled Agile. The first thing you'll see is someone blogging that Agile is only for small projects, right? It's not an enterprise-wide methodology or whatever that you can't really do Agile at scale. So we didn't believe that, and we wanted to make sure that people understood that this was something that could be scaled. So that's where really the Application Development Center came into play. And I forgot about this slide. How much scale are we really talking about? So Nationwide does about, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars in software build every year. Hundreds of millions. We have over 7,000 IT associates right now. So we're not talking about small scale. We're talking about very large scale. Very large IT shop, very large organization trying to adopt Agile is going to be extremely difficult. I think in the last presentation, Ken made a comment, it's going to be hard, right? Well, that was our problem. We had to figure it out. In 2009, we made a formal declaration that we're going to build this shared organization, we're going to build the Application Development Center, and we're going to scale. We're going to leverage Lean, or leverage Agile, and we're going to attempt to figure out how to scale this, okay? The new problem How do we repeat the localized successes? We only had a current handful of teams, so we brought teams in. We brought them all in and said, okay, if you're performing Agile, we want you in the Dev Center, okay? We only had a handful, though. We had our 21 tea leaves, but reality was it was philosophy, it wasn't process, okay? And reality was we needed a framework to scale. That's really where Lean came into play, okay? So if you're familiar with Lean, Lean is based on the Toyota production system, okay? Very well respected in the auto industry, okay? Definitely something that we can pin our processes to, or pin the Agile framework to and say, okay, let's leverage those tools to scale this, okay? So if you really take a look at it, operational excellence was where we really wanted to be from a lean development organization. So what's that look like? This is what we call the ADC Lean House, okay? Foundationally, problem solving, culture, employee engagement. Up at the top, operational excellence, learning organization, visual management. You'll see a lot about visual management in our teams. Visual management is extremely important. And if you know anything about Lean, that's extremely important to how managers do their work, how teams do their work. So Agile fit really nicely into this framework. The right side, the Lean development system. Things we like to talk about, standardized work. Sounds a little contradictory to Agile, but reality is if you want to scale, you have to figure out how to set some sort of standards for your teams, okay? Kaizen, Japanese word for continuous improvement. It's not about just having a standard, but it's about having a standard that you can improve. Waste elimination. One of the key concepts of Lean, eliminating waste. So we had to drive out waste within our processes. Okay, it's not just about Agile, it's about driving out the waste. On the other pillar is really around Lean management system. It's not just how the workers are working, it's how the leaders are acting. Okay, it's how they're doing their work. Things like leader standardized work, daily accountability processes, and discipline management are extremely important to the framework. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about those too. So let's talk first about the development system. The Lean development system really governs the actual work, how the actual work is executed, improved, and monitored. Okay? So one of the things I like to say is if I had a very large scale of Agile teams and I have one that's doing retrospectives, okay, and discovers a great way to improve productivity, how do I make sure the 20th team learns the same thing? Okay? I have to have some sort of system and framework to allow that to happen. Okay? So it's continuous improvement, it's around standardizing your work, and it's around eliminating waste. So we had to have, on all of these teams, some sort of foundation that everyone could go back to. We had to have a baseline, okay? And it had to be a process, an input and output. We had to come up with something like that. And the Lean development system helped us understand how to do that. Standardized work. How many Agilists don't believe in standardized work? Where's my activist? A lot of Agilists don't believe in that. I think in the manifesto it says people over process, right? That is great. But if you go too far, you really are going to have a hard time scaling. You have to have some sort of benchmark that everybody adheres to, okay? If you don't, they're going to astray. And they're going to say they're great. But in reality, are they as good as another team? Or can anyone benefit from what they're doing? So standardized work is extremely important, and we believe in it wholeheartedly in the Dev Center. Continue.
What's an example of standardized work?
So standardized work is how you do your work. So an example was, do you believe in daily stand-ups, right? So what's the process for a daily stand-up? Do you believe in iterations? What's the process for that? And really what we're trying to do is is inputs and outputs and define what that process was.